Hello, my name is Emma. I'm currently a first-year undergraduate studying human sciences at the University of Oxford. If you are listening to this podcast, you probably have similar experiences with news as me. I've always been quite overwhelmed by the sheer quantity of information in news outlets and found it very frustrating how difficult it was to extract information I wanted. This is what attracted me to BizGs, or Art for Refugees micro-internship, where the aim is to make news, specifically news on refugees, as clear and structured as possible. Now, I hope I have achieved this in my article, Nowhere to Belong, the Rohingyas' Identity Crisis from Myanmar to Bangladesh. This article focuses on the Rohingya people, a stateless Muslim minority from Myanmar who face profound challenges in retaining their identity. I break this down into their national identity, where they are not legally acknowledged as citizens or refugees by any country. Their identity as a human being, how in the process of becoming stateless, they lose fundamental human rights and dignity. And lastly, their cultural identity, specifically how fragmentation over value of Myanmar as a home country is different across generations, as many children are born into the state of limbo. I'm quite fascinated with identity. I hold an American passport, but I am ethnically Chinese and have spent the majority of my life in China. Even still, there are times where I feel like my identity is split and somehow weaker than others purely because of my legal standing in the world. What do you think make up your identity? Is it what you like, what you're good at, who you're friends with? Or is it your nationality, your culture, your humanity? Would you have thought of that as part of your identity if not asked? Asking this to myself and doing this article has made me realize how identity is something everybody takes for granted and believes to be stable, but it's in fact quite fragile. It is also very unpleasant to not have a whole one. In this sense, what I feel is incomparable to the Rohingyas stuck in refugee camps and squalid. My article intends to show the long-term but often ignored psychological consequences that being a refugee can have on a person and a community's identity. First, there's the relationship between a person and their state. This is probably the one most often taken for granted, something that's there from birth. And ironically, it has great importance in acting as a pillar in our lives, providing safety, and in most cases, comfort, knowing that there's always someone backing us. But for the Rohingya, this identity was ripped away from them, and instead it became their source of pain and suffering. Mohammed Hussein is a Rohingya refugee in Bangladesh. He is 65 years old and have witnessed the previous equality of Rohingyas, but also its dissolution. He's a great example. He puts this loss of national identity clearly. In a country where our ancestors had been living, we could no longer vote. For both the refugees and the internally displaced people within Myanmar, basic human rights were also taken away from them, such as freedom of movement, access to education, healthcare, and employment, something we cannot even imagine. And this challenges their identity as human beings. This is probably something that many of us would not even consider to be something that could be challenged. Mohammed sees this as especially harmful for their dignity as humans and describes himself and his community as walking corpses who have no rights, not even the right to visit his daughter in an adjacent camp. This lack of livelihood opportunities also puts the Rohingya at great risk of becoming victims of trafficking and creates a lost generation that is unable to integrate into society even when given the chance. This will be further separating them from the rest of humanity and also objectifying their existence. The Rohingyas' own cultural identity is also under threat. There seems to be a difference in how strongly the older and the younger generations feel about Myanmar. Older adults display homesickness and a longing for Myanmar, their home country, in all the interviews conducted. Nabiullah said, "We all miss our home terribly. I do not even feel like eating when memories of Myanmar come back." But for the children, because so many of them grew up away from or were not born in Myanmar, they don't feel as sentimental about Rohingyas' history and ancestry as their parents do. And that is the issue. They weren't even given the opportunity to do so, to form that bond between home country and self. And although this cultural identity isn't as challenged as the others, it's still very alarming that this displacement could lead to a loss of value that stemmed in centuries of history. However, the scariest part must be how the Rohingyas crisis is slowly turning invisible on the international agenda. And it's bringing widespread hopelessness to the Rohingyas as they watch the supposedly temporary settlements turn more and more permanent as their real homes get destroyed. It's vital that international attention is given to this topic and that the Rohingyas' home is returned to them safely and peacefully. Okay, now that you've heard a summary of my article and why I have written it, I will wrap it up with 3 key takeaways I hope you consider after reading my article. The first is to walk away with a deeper understanding of the Rohingya crisis. See it not just as a regional issue, but as a global one that needs to be addressed. But also to remember the more specifics, to look beyond the statistics, because it is always about the lives affected. Individuals like Mohammed Hussein, whose longing to visit his daughter should be a basic human right, not a luxury behind guarded gates. And third, on a more general note, I hope in your future navigations of the convoluted world of news, you maintain a critical mindset, to not just passively intake information, but process it, understand it, and question it, even if it can get really difficult sometimes. On that note, I hope you enjoy or have enjoyed my article, and have a good day.